Hello and welcome to the SC Playbook podcast, the third episode of the 2024 NRL pre-season, proudly brought to you by Pat and George from Mortgage Choice SCW. I'm your host, Tim Williams. We're getting excited. We're a couple of weeks out from the first of the NRL trials of the season. In fact, there's actually a couple on this weekend. They're all reserve grade teams, but exciting nonetheless. Our first guest of tonight is the one, the only, the Supercoach Spy. Spy.
How are we?
I'm good, mate.
That's good.
That's all you got for me?
That's all I got.
Oh,
I know I normally come in firing, but I got nothing.
Yeah, I've got a better introduction than you anyway this week, mate. You've had a few weeks on the podcast.
I'm waiting for the big gun over here.
The next one, our third member of the panel, Quantium CEO, Bulldogs board member, Supercoach aficionado, Adam Driussi. Welcome back for the first time in 24.
Thank you, Timmy. Good to be here. Good to be here, Spy. Aficionado, so was that a downgrade from gun that you said last year when I corrected you?
Yeah, I've had to edit the template from last year.
That sounds like someone who's interested but hasn't performed that well the last couple of years. I'll take the feedback on board.
Can you update your bio, mate?
Yeah, I'll do that. Thank you.
Makes me sound more intelligent while not rapping you too much.
Yeah, very good.
Mate, talk to us. The off-season, feed up. Do a bit of travel. How you been?
Yeah, no, I've been good. Did some travel, went overseas to Canada for a little while, which is good. Plenty of Bulldog stuff on, my real job. So, yeah, no, really good. Looking forward to I just can't wait to rip into the year, mate. Supercoach, obviously the Bulldogs. Can't wait. You
got the doggy sorted. You got Sammy Hughes playing 65 straight for us or what?
Yeah, if not 80, mate. We'll sort 80. That out. Yeah, I'm sure we can squeeze out an 80-minute roll at prop for him.
I've heard you've been in Serraldo's here with that one for us. Also with us, as always, it's a survivor. A survivor of the Bloke in a Bar 7-hour podcast. It has to be a podcasting record, at least in Australia. Matty the Waterboy.
Yeah, I have no doubt it was a podcast record. There were so many funny comments from there. One guy literally watched the first 2 hours, went out to dinner with his mates and drinks, came back, and the podcast still had 2 hours left. It was just... Yeah, it was crazy, but I think it was a pretty good show.
Oh, mate, it was the world's longest podcast. But at the end of the day, if you sit there and go, 7 hours is a long time to have to do, and we knew what we were walking into as well. But then you have this reality check of, look, it's a Monday or a Thursday or whenever we recorded. We were talking about rugby league for 7 hours, so I was like, I can get through it.
Yeah, it's completely fine. Yeah. It's completely fine when you think about it like that.
It's something that I was going to be doing anyway, just in front of a camera.
Exactly.
Remind me to actually stick it on going home tonight because I've got about a month for round one. Good to get through it.
Yeah, if your young fella doesn't sleep tonight, Spy, you can get it done by 7 a.m. tomorrow morning. Guys, before we get stuck into today's show, the SC Playbook subscription package is available at scplaybook.com.au. That is just $40 for the entire NRL season, but what does it get you? Access to our numerous additional premium articles on site each and every week of the preseason and multiple articles every round of the actual NRL season. Our WhatsApp group popping off, our SC Playbook community all in one place, going back and forth with team advice and each other. Our team of contributors are in there dropping their trade plans, skippers, preseason chat, heaps and heaps of good stuff. The late mail thread's been added to that. We've also added an NRL Supercoach draft thread to that one as well, so it's all happening there. Access to our unlimited group major prize, $1,000 for anyone that can knock off the SC Playbook contributors. The first question and answer podcast of the season where we take the subscriber questions, free to listen to for all though, of course. That'll go live this week as well. Our SC Playbook Unlimited group code is 743596. Jump in, take us on, $1,000 up for grabs. On today's show, we'll start off talking about team structure, how we've set up our squads, where we're distributing the big bucks and where we're penny pinching, our club previews, Bulldogs starting off, ads, giving us the lowdown. Without getting strife from the Gouldfather, mate, I'm sure you'll be revealing all.
Everything I know.
You said pre-podcast you're going to tell us absolutely everything. What's changed? No, that's not true at all. Just going to tell us nothing.
The Dolphins, is it hammer time in Redcliffe? The answer to that is yes. Yes, it is. The Panthers, can Taylor May overcome the Supercoach ACL curse? And at the Cowboys, can Taumalolo overcome Father Time to rescue our front row forward slot? The answer to that, probably not, but we'll find out. We also have our listening questions at the end for the first time this season. Now, Spy, let's get started on a bit of team structure, mate. A lot of questions coming in around how we are structuring our side, where we're spending the money, where we're penny pinching, finding our cheapies, where we see is obviously the important positions. And I'll start with you, mate. You've had a good look into this and evaluated your own side. How have you set yours up so far?
Yeah, so obviously plenty of ways you can go, boys, which is good. Beauty of Supercoach is you don't have to just do what everyone else does. As few ways to skin a cat. So for me, I've got one gun hooker, 2 mid-range front rowers, all mid-range second rowers at the moment. That always worries me a little bit, but we'll just see.
Just quickly.
Yep.
Few ways to skin a cat. Any idea where that came from? It's pretty grim.
That is grim.
Yeah, very common, but very grim.
Last week's call the day was just a bit weird, whatever I said, and this one was grim.
Yes,
Just
many
theme.
ways to skin a cat.
I'll get back to you.
Carry on, mate.
I'll find out.
Mid-range 2 RFs.
Yep, mid-range 2 RFs at the moment. 2 elite halfbacks. No prizes for guessing those 2. A little bit cheaper in the 5'8" position. Centres are actually looking okay in that we'll get to this bloke in a little bit, but he's a really good centre without costing the absolute elite numbers. Then I've got sort of a couple of blokes around the the 450k mark. So I'm not paying up massive money in my centres, but it's not just cheapies who I have to rely on either. So sort of a bit of a balance there.
How many currently CT dubs? Obviously 7 slots to fill there. How many over, let's say 400k for you at the moment?
3.
Okay.
Yep. So 3 at the moment, which I always feel pretty good about. 3 that I can half rely on, then 1 that I can hopefully plug in on matchups from the cheapies.
We've always approached that a little differently. Yeah, and it's, remember 3 or 4 years ago when the idea was that you stayed cheap at CT Dub because there was a lot of cheapies there.
Yep.
They only needed to jag a couple of tries here or there to get some cash growth happening, whereas at 2RF or front row, it could be a lot slower, a little bit harder to do. But even in recent years, as I've built up my CT Dub a little bit, you've always gone a little harder there and spent up bigger than I have.
Yeah, I typically, back in the old days, I didn't. But the best year I had was when I started with Brian Tor and back Penrith in, and it's sort of, you got to do what works for you, obviously. So I felt good that year doing it. So we'll see what happens this year. And to round it out, 2 elite fullbacks. So to really summarise there, elite halves and fullbacks, 1 gun hooker, and then pretty mid-rangey, the rest, to be honest, because I've spent a lot of money on those 5 positions.
Yeah, and I've done relatively similar. As I said, a little bit cheaper at CT Dub. And look, I could make a case, this is obviously pending where the cheapies land come round 1, but a case to go 3, potentially even 4 CT dubs there, because I think it could be where a lot of our cheapies do emerge. One thing, Spy, that I have found time and time again, every time I'm tinkering around with my side for the pre-season, I should say, and it's a question. I'll start with a question from Adam Sargent because it ties into it nicely. And he asks, thinking of not starting with any 400k mid-range second rowers and instead going 3 600k second rowers and cheapies on the bench. The thought process is if the 400k players are outscoring the 600k players, just trade down to them, and also having Katoa and Gilbert's early buys gives me flexibility to not lose cash. Good idea, or is the likes of Lane, Curran, etc. too good not to go with? Now, I did my team reveal on the SC Playbook website today, and I have found that I dead set reckon close to the top 10 value players to start the season, mid-rangers, are in the 2RF position. So I'm loaded in there with 400k players. I wanted Cam Murray in my team so bad. He was in there all pre-season, but he didn't make the cut because I just think there is a wealth of mid-range 2RFs.
Yeah, I agree. This year in particular, there's just so many of them. You won't probably get them all right, but you could. I don't mind the idea. I tinkered with the idea of having 1 gun back rower, whether it be a Fafita or whoever it may be, and then you can drop down, if necessary, to whoever's killing it that you've missed out on. To do 3 elite back rowers, it's definitely a different strategy. I wouldn't be doing it, but I mean, as I said, there's different ways to do it. It could be stroke of genius.
Yeah, I have a list in that article of about 3 to 4 mid-range 2RFs that I had to cut because I'm like, I want them in my team, but you've got 6 slots there. So in terms of my team structure, I said relatively similar. I've gone all the mid-ranges around 2RF. My halfbacks are loaded. My fullbacks are loaded. A bit cheaper at 5'8", to allow for all this to happen. A little bit cheaper at the centre wing spot. I'm trying to go mid-range for front row forward like I do each and every year, but I tell you what, there's not a lot of players putting their hand up for that. Yeah. And the hooking spot, Spy, ties into another question from Cuz. Your thoughts on skipping Grant at hooker and running 2 of the cheaper hookers in Brayley and whoever gets the para number 9? Now, I think there'll be a lot of people on board with Cuz there and thinking that they might not want Grant or Marshall King. There are so many question marks around all the cheapy hookers. I just want to lock in one premium there.
I think so as well. And again, my answer's always going to be the same. You can do it. My risk around that hooking rotation, if you do get the Paraguay
Hard to pay up.
and Brayley, what if they both come out and end up playing like 50 minutes and you're like, I'm stuck because it's so hard to go from 300k up to your 600 or 700.
You have to find 3 to
It's
400k.
It's at least 2 trades to do it. I don't like that. I'd much prefer to have a good hooker.
Yeah.
And if those blokes are smashing it, you can go down and upgrade someone massive elsewhere who's struggling. So I'd just rather do it in reverse.
I've got Grant there and Hands at the moment. If Hands does get named as an 80-minute hooker, and yeah, if Grant starts slow and say Brayley or someone kills it, bang, straight down, happy days, frees up cash elsewhere. As general approach for you starting a season when you look to pick your team, how do you look into it? Do you have a common approach each year, or where do you sit at?
Yeah, I'll probably, a bit like we were talking about before, I'll probably look at how many cheapies can I get in there. Like it really comes down to those teams in round one, right? So name as many good cheapies as I can get in my side, I would, to then get premium players. But you're right, it is a bit of a funny year in terms of what those cheapies might be. But there'll always be players that come out of the woodwork pick that we haven't expected. But my team's not too dissimilar to yours, except I've gone even cheaper at centre. And I, at the moment, have got a couple of those. Like I've got Murray and Fafita.
Yeah.
Partly because I think they're guns that other people aren't running with. Yeah, but I don't have my centre looks pretty weak.
Yeah.
So
I don't mind that. No, I tinkered with the same idea.
Yeah.
So I don't mind it this year.
It's much easier to go down than up. Just everyone remember that, obviously. Like if you're Fafita or whoever isn't going quite as well as you want and one of the mid-rangers is smashing it, it's an easy drop down.
That's it. And so the way I probably think of it is get as many cheap as I can. And then who are the guns that I just want to lock in? So I'll give you an example. Like Tom Trebojevic for me, I'm going to start with him.
Yeah.
Like I'm just making a call like, I just think the guy's a super coach weapon. If he's not 60% owned straight away, which he's not going to be, I'll kind of take a bit of a bet that if I can get him early, that'd be great. And then because it's going to be hard for anyone else to give up on a Ponga or a Mitchell or whoever it is to bring in Tom in round 3 or whatever it might be.
Just on that, I reckon this year we're going to find some decisions might need to be made around fullback where, let's use Pappenhausen, for example. I've got Tommy to start. I'm probably with you now. I'm starting to lean that way. If I've got 2 elite fullbacks, but Pappy's killing it, you're probably going to have to pick one to drop, even if they're going really well, which is really unusual.
You're right. If you had 2 big dogs and Pappy fires like we know he's done in the past. If Pappy starts 85% of what we know he's capable of, he's kicking goals and looking good, he's hands down the best value player to start the season. So you could have to... Let's say you start Ponga and Turbo and they both start off with an 80-point average and
Like,
Pappy does the same. You've got to cut one.
Yeah, which is fine.
It could happen.
It's just different thinking to...
I guess you have to look at the draw at the time and then work out what he might do. But so yeah, it's. I mean, I love this time of the year because it's always interesting as to who those players might be. And the other thing I think is, it's very easy to get locked into following like the herd and then everyone thinking that certain players are musts. And if we went back to this time last year, everyone would have been saying certain players like who was the hooker at Sonny Luke at Penrith. So many people followed, Sonny Luke's going to be big, and so many teams then got stuck with him, and he wasn't what people thought. And so there's always those players that
was Guru's fault.
We think, yeah, but you know what I mean. But 1 or 2 people, and then the herd mentality, and then you look and go, oh geez, 36% of teams have got that player, I must do it.
Worried about this, yeah.
Yeah, and so I think if you've got a strong opinion about someone you think yourself, then
Back it
I'd
in.
say back it in, yeah.
I mean, another point on what you just raised, actually, we're in sync without even planning this. So it's around ownerships and something I was going to raise tonight at some point, and it's around anti-potting. So for those that don't know, anti-potting is going against a popular player. I think it's okay to do it at times, like you just said. Other times, just be wary. I was having a look at Nico Hines. So if you don't own Nico, you're not planning on starting with him. They play your boys in round 2. We don't know how the doggies are going to be going to start the year. He could potentially have a huge match. If you don't own him and everyone who owns him skippers him, it's actually double the blow if he goes 150. So just around anti-potting, just be wary of who you're going to do it on because the skipper value is obviously double for the weeks you don't have him. Yeah.
I think
Blended
the other thing,
that in.
I think all 3 of us at the moment have Cleary and Hines,
Yeah.
right? So again, to me, that's just a lock-in. Unless there's an injury between now and then, I just look at them and say they're so dominant at half. I'm not even contemplating a strategy without those 2 as my halves.
It was really hard to justify and make a case for anyone other than those 2, wasn't there? Like I look at Penrith and we'll get to them shortly, but they have a really difficult draw to start the season. But will there be a premiership hangover? Do they start a bit slower? Who do you go to? Like, there's no one at like 500-600K just bashing the door down, going like you got maybe someone Sammy Walker might be enticing, but
he's probably the
compared
only
to
one.
Cleary,
And worth noting as well, last season was World Cup. Penrith went. Oh, they didn't go to England. They go to England this year, but they had World Cup on the back of 3 big seasons. No World Cup or much rep this year. A lot of the guns didn't play for Australia and New Zealand necessarily. Yeah. Pretty long off season. It has to help just for a better start.
Oh man, I know from talking to the Bulldogs at the time, like the players that went to that World Cup and came back, it had a huge impact on them in terms England, of not having a pre-season stuff. So Penrith had a lot of people in that boat. Yeah.
Even
so there's no doubt
that
would have had a huge impact.
Jet lag, getting over that, travel, all that stuff adds up. So hopefully the team's fresher to start this season.
I also think just those two blokes are kind of match up. They're bomb-proof. Like, it doesn't matter who they play. They can put on 100. So anyway, that's the one thing that we've got in common. I think all three of us is locked in big money on those two guns.
Yeah, and happy to do it. Boys, let's get started with our previews for the show. And we will start with your doggies ads. They start the season against the Eels away, Sharks away, Titans at home, Rabbitohs away, Roosters at home. Now, 3 away games, but they do have all 5 of their games in Sydney. Now, mate, you tell us what you want to tell us. You keep a few up your sleeve, whether it's looking after the Gouldfather, Seraldo, or whether just your Supercoach team and you want a few little sneaky ones up your sleeve for that. But we'll start with just the forward pack, mate. And Sammy Hughes currently one of those popular cheapies in the game. What can you tell us about him? And, is he a bloke you see getting a start on the bench this season because you're so light on middles? How do you see that unfolding for Sammy Hughes, firstly?
Let me start by saying I don't know what the size is going to be because I'm amazed by how many Bulldog supporters watch this and say, I've seen you on that, so that's great. So
what a deflection early, by the way. That's well played.
Well, I don't. I mean, I obviously know how things are going, and I've got views of what I would pick. But Cameron picks a side, and Cameron that's up to Cameron, and I wouldn't think to hammer him on it. But obviously, I have thought about it quite a lot myself. What I do know is obviously there are minutes up for grabs. I actually think the Bulldogs are a pretty exciting Supercoach side this year because of a lot of, depending on who gets picked, there's some opportunities there. And front row is clearly going to be one of them. I think there's minutes there. I think I can tell you that Sam Hughes is going great at training. Like there's big raps on him with how he's developed. He had a lot of injuries leading into last preseason. When he did get minutes, I thought he went really well, but he didn't play big minutes. But I would expect him to play a bigger role. How big it is? No idea. Does he start? Does he bench? I don't know. I wouldn't be surprised if there's a guy like Pawasa. I wouldn't be surprised if even he is in the 17. So look, I think there's options there that'll come up in terms of the side, but we'll see.
How big a boy is Sammy Hughes? Like
big boy.
Big boy.
Yeah, big boy.
So if he does kill and goes well, it might be a sort of 45 minutes max, or.
Look, I honestly, I'd be guessing like you would be. Could he play 45 minutes? I don't know. But I also know Max King's put on a fair bit of weight since last year, so he carried a lot of injuries last year. He started playing pretty light. He's looking bigger. So I think there's going to be definite minutes and points up for grabs in the Bulldogs front row. We'll just wait and see what team this looks like. But it's one of those ones where you could probably throw a Sam Hughes into your lineup at the moment as a cheapie, and whether you replace him with another guy, we'll see. Yeah,
he's in my side as it stands. And, I mean, I look at my predicted lineup on the side and the forward pack I didn't find that difficult to do, nor the bench. The back line 1 to 7. We'll get to that in a second, but very, very difficult to do. And to be honest, I'd be surprised if Seraldo knew exactly how he was going to run out that 1 to 7 in round 1. Josh Curran, a recruit, a very popular Supercoach pick to start the season. Starts the season at $421,000. I'm expecting him to start at lock forward. Looks a pretty safe bet to me. We know he's got a motor on him. He can play big minutes. We know he's not as big a boy, as guys like Maxi King, Liam Knight, Sammy Hughes. So I can see him playing pretty decent minutes, and provided he gets them, he looks a pretty safe buy to me.
Oh, if he's picked in round 1 at lock, then I think he'd be a good buy, but we've got to wait and see what Cameron does. I don't think it's a certainty, but you would think, that's probably what you would guess. I think I can understand why people would think that might be the case, but I don't think there's too many certainties in that side that you've got there, put it that way.
Yeah, he's just Curran's. He averaged 54 and 67 the 2 years previous to last year. He's priced at 41, so if
he's a Supercoach player,
if he's starting,
he's Supercoach friendly.
And also, NRL-wise, I really like him on the edge, but with Preston and Big Billy Kickow on the edges, the Dogs need middles. He'll be playing in the middle, I can only imagine. So, bigger work rate playing up the guts as well. Viliami Kickow is a really intriguing one that I have tossed and turned over. $468,000 discounted, having only played, sort of a handful of games last season. I'm torn on him because I don't think he needs to do that much to, at the very least, match his price. I think he's going to be a focal point of the Bulldogs' attack. We know he's capable of jagging some major attacking stats. I want to pick him, but I do see some danger in it.
I mean, I hope you're right. I hope his value goes up by 300,000 because he's killing it. I probably won't get him just because I've never really thought of Viliami as a super coach, like a reliable super coach weapon. Like
outside of attack for Penrith.
And that Penrith side won a comp. So, yes, he scored some tries and he was dynamic, but he's had a lot of other weapons around him. And by the way, I really hope I love him as a player, leader, all that sort of stuff. But we don't have a soft draw to start the year.
No.
And I think you'd be relying on him scoring attacking points to go up. And
say you're going the first 5 rounds, I think he needs to make a bit of cash, maybe a try and line break and maybe a try assist and line assist in those sort of first 5 games to see him, average that 50 odd. Yeah. But again, I think he's every chance to do it. A big preseason watch. How do the doggies look? How's the left edge look? How does Viliami Kickow look?
Yeah.
But if those 3 things can be positive and green check marks, I don't mind it. But you are relying on attack as opposed to a lot of other back rows.
I think he looks good, so there's no issues with that bit. Like I think is he fit and all that sort of stuff. I think it's all good. The question for me is, it's just not the sort of super coach, like without my Bulldogs hat on, it's not the sort of super coach second rower I tend to go for.
He's priced at 46 average. That's probably the big difference there. Like he's not going to really let you down. The worst case is he's like, he's just not making me money. It's annoying. And then you trade him to one of these other mid-rangers with some upside. So
that's it.
You can see why you go him, but
I don't think it's going to make or break whether you get the right 2RF mid-rangers, because it's such a sideways trade to other blokes that are going to go well.
Except you don't want to stuff them all up.
Of course. Saving trades is invaluable. We know that. But
if you get 1 or 2 wrong, it's okay.
Sorry, I should say in terms of salary cap and getting to them, it's going to be an easy trade-off.
It won't cost you money.
Nah.
Can I ask you this question? How many players would you be comfortable to have from one side, in this case the Bulldogs, in your squad? Like, you don't want to have too many from one side.
For me, it's all about the buy, mate. I think the doggies don't have a buy to around 8, so it doesn't worry me all that much. If I thought they were going to come out and fizz and in a good way, and offer value, I don't mind having 4 or 5 and then figuring it out. However, we'll get to the Dolphins a bit later. They got to buy in, I think, around 2 or 3. Yeah. That's what you got to be careful of, because you got no depth early in the year to cover yourself.
Yep.
So I think it's when their buy is the big question.
You don't want to be playing spud, cheapy, CT dubs against good sides where they can get you 17 because you've got 3 Titans on the buy or 4 on the buy.
I think I had 6 chooks last year and they had the buy in round 5, and my mentality was they're just going to kill it. They're going to get me off to a flyer, then I can trade from there as needed, and they did exactly the opposite. They started terribly, and I had to trade them, and they lost money. It was just...
That was part of why I asked the question, because I was just thinking, like, last year, I probably had too many Roosters as well, and then when they fizzed as a side, by the way, I'm not fizzed in a negative way there, it made it difficult to kind of make the changes quick.
Should have been premiership contenders.
And it made it difficult to make all the changes you need to make in the time you needed to make it. That's why it's just making me a little bit wary of going too much to one side. In saying that, I think there's going to be some obvious Bulldogs players to pick. You named a couple of them.
In saying that, I don't have more than 2 or 3 from anyone at this stage.
Okay.
Spy, Jacob Kiraz, I spoke about in the first episode of the season. Go back, listen to episode 1, episode 2. We'll be touching on different things through the entire preseason that will hold up all the way through to round 1 with club previews, different topics, all sorts of things. And my pod early in the season was Jacob Kiraz. I haven't checked since then, but at the time of recording, he was at 1.6% ownership. He averaged 80 before injury last season in his first 6 games with only 3 tries. Injured late last season and got somewhat sort of back to health towards the back end. 33 in base, could easily have been towards 40, and it was early in the season. He had
It was nearly 50, I think.
Yeah, he had just 6 tries in 19 games. He's priced on a 59-point average. Adds Kiraz, after those injury dramas last season and how well he started last year, he's just got one hell of a motor and work ethic. He's a bloke that I'm pretty keen on for round 1. You know, and it doesn't even matter that much how the dog's looking because he just works.
Yeah, he's got a Supercoach friendly game. What I would say is I would just ignore the second half of last year in terms of his output. Like, just ignore it when you're looking at what you think he's worth. Because he was carrying, even when he was playing, he was carrying
everything.
Well, he had a bad back injury, like a broken back or something. So he was carrying injuries playing, and he was doing a job, like a bunch of them were. But so just ignore that in your stats, and then I think the first half of the year is probably more reflective. And again,
80.
assuming he's in a similar role.
He averaged 80 over the first 6 weeks.
Yeah, I think he's got a really
Supercoach
Supercoach friendly game. I love him as a Supercoach player, but
So he's my boy that I've got. I wanted like a Greg Marju I spoke about last week for 190k less. Kiraz time.
the other thing is last year he played some games at wing, some in the centres. I would think he's playing on the wing, like you said. I don't know that for sure, but I would be pretty confident he'd be on the wing. In which case, again, just go back and look at
tries,
look at his work rate as a wing and not a centre.
48 offloads a week.
I don't want him if he's at centre. I want him if it's. I'm tempted by him if he's on the wing. Stephen Crichton, let's see where he ends up. If he's at fullback and kicking goals, there'll be temptation there, but I don't know whether he's going to play there. We had a bit of chat about it pre-show. We don't know. We don't know.
Fullback or centre, we don't know.
Could be anywhere.
Adz cough 1 or 3 times on an unrelated note. No,
the problem is I've got a bit of a cough, so now I'm going to be misinterpreted. The other thing is I don't know who's kicking goals. I haven't asked the guys.
Just on that.
It's a rare privilege to have two guys who are such good goal kickers.
Birdo was 85% last year.
He was enormous,
I didn't
mate.
realise.
And the second half of the year, he couldn't miss. He was kicking from the sideline. We won games off the back of it. Yeah. But then Crichton kicked in front of Moses in Origin. So
and he's like 83%
kick as well.
They're two guns, aren't they?
I don't know who's kicking. Haven't asked.
Matty, over at the Doggies, mate, is there any players you're looking to start the season with? You know, we've gone on players like a valued Kickout, a valued Curran, Critter if he gets a nod at fullback. Anyone that you like there?
Yeah, you've mentioned a lot of names, and I've had a think about all of them, but two that kind of that I'm thinking about. One is Bronson Sherry. I absolutely loved him at Cronulla. Obviously, he hasn't played for 4 years, so it's a huge risk, but his price so low. So if he's there round 1, I'm definitely picking him. And I think, I haven't really heard many people. Holy shit. Sorry, Spy. That's been up there for 4 years and never come down.
On my head.
The roof's caving in.
Wow.
Gus is sending a message.
It's
all the way from Hawaii.
Shut up.
Because I watch you guys on here, not there. I saw that go down on you, so I shat myself.
Guys, that's made of metal. It just brushed me off the head. No dramas.
You responded well to that.
Dramas.
Maybe no to Sherry then. Who knows? Maybe that's a sign.
Mate, that could be a sign from the universe.
No, the one I was going to say was Critter. So, if he's playing fullback, he played all of his career at centre and wing at Penrith. So, who knows? Obviously, he played for a premiership winning team 3 in a row. So there is a difference there, and it is a huge risk. But I don't know, someone to think about.
Yeah.
Boys, on to the Dolphins.
Max King, we brushed over.
Boys, Max King. Well, we traded middle forwards and Ads was quiet. So, I did have in the notes Maxi King.
Only because he would have... Everyone was injured last year. I assume he's probably healthier now.
He definitely carried injuries. Yep. He was one of those guys that played through when it would have been ideally to get a rest, and he played longer minutes probably. But I'm hearing good things about where he's at, what his body's like, where he's at. So he got married in the off season. So
beautiful. Could be a good or bad thing. We'll find out.
I'm sure it's a good thing.
The year before last was 1.09 points per minute. Basically, I had a look, and if he could play 57 minutes, I'll just pull that out of my bum. But if he played 57 minutes, he'd be averaging 62. He's priced a whole lot lower than that, so we just don't know his minutes. That's probably the issue. You're taking a little punt there of whether he's going to be A, super healthy, and B, playing those extra minutes. So that's the tricky part on Max for me, which puts him in the sort of unsure, in the mix basket for me, but not a slam dunk, is he?
Yeah, as I said, huge trial watch on Ads as Doggies. Boys, the Dolphins. A team that certainly a bit more optimism from this potty host than last year on the Dolphins. Put egg on my face, starting the season. They play the Cowboys at home, the Dragons at home. They have the bye in round 3, the Titans away, the Tigers at home. They leave Queensland once before round 12. The one time they leave it is to go to Darwin to face the Eels, which is an Eels home game. They have been absolutely blessed with that draw. Now I get it. It's obviously going to come around. There'll be a lot of probably away games later on, but like they've got the Broncos away at Suncorp, also their home ground. The Titans away, they go down an hour down the road, 2 hours down the road. They've got the Tigers, which is an away game at Suncorp. That is unbelievable.
They also play round 13, 16 and 19. All the major bye weeks there. So that early bye is a bit of a pain in round 3. Outside of that, it's bloody magic.
I was having a bit of a look at that and with a bit of interest in a couple of Dolphins. Initially, I sort of thought, all right, if you're keen on a player, maybe, and you're not too sure on them, you can potentially wait an extra week because you can pick them up in round 4 before any price rise. At the same time, if they do fail a little bit, particularly if it's maybe someone a little bit cheaper or a bit more value, you don't have to worry about the price drop in round 3, so you can wait till round 4. It sort of works in both ways.
Yeah.
That was the Roosters last year, remember? I think that was the thing that you could trade out more of the guys because there was 2 weeks to do it. So it does create...
That's the upside of it, isn't it?
The upside, yeah.
That being said, if you've got an expensive player like our first player, we'll get to Jermaine Asako there, and he flops the first 2 rounds, you probably don't want to carry that much in your CT dub for round 3 and have to wait till round 4. So, look, I think it probably works against them, but just worth noting, Jermaine Asako, last year's Supercoach and NRL to be for revelation. 77 point average. He had 28 in base for the year, 24 tries in 24 games, goal-kicking winger. The Dolphins, in theory, should be even better this season. Spy, not for me. I just think he's priced at his absolute peak. That being said, not only do they have a lot of games in Queensland early, but the draw is so soft. Not for me, too expensive. Hopefully get a drop in price and look at him later on in the year. What do you think?
Yeah, given I've already got blokes at fullback and halfback that are already at max price, who I'm relying on for those, lock-in points, I don't necessarily want another one in the centres who, best case probably does the same thing and doesn't make money. So we're going to have to make cash somewhere. So that's a bit around my thinking around Marju as well. We spoke about I'm super keen on him, still am, but do I want another bloke who's probably not going to make money? Probably not. So that makes Asako an avoid, which doesn't mean he couldn't come out and go bang, bang, bang and score a heap of tries.
That's it. Like, obviously he can start the year with tons and make money, but he has to average more than 77 to make any cash. To make it worthwhile from a cash generation perspective, he has to average 85 plus to make that 50, 100K, whatever it might be. Maybe he does it. But even if he does that, you're not going to then want to sell him because he's obviously killing it. Yeah. So in which case, sweet, you got on him early, happy days. But, I am happy to pay top dollar for a player who I don't think is really going to make money if they've got a huge ceiling like Cleary, like Hines. They're clearly the best in their position. There's not a lot of value elsewhere. But Asako, there's a lot of value at CT dub ads. Not for me.
Yeah, look, I've only just finished wiping the egg off my face from last year about Asako because I think we all wrote him off and he absolutely brained it from early in the year. However, at that price, like, as you say, I'm bringing in a Cleary and a Hines because I kind of think if you don't have those guys to start the year, then you're not going to be able to win it. I think you can start the year without Asako and win it. So then there's other centres who are highly priced that I would go a long way before him, but maybe he's the ultimate pod for some team.
Maybe, and as you said,
round 3 bye. Like, do I want to?
Yeah,
and 800,000 or something. Who are you going to start in the centres in round 3? When he's got the bye, because it's going to be probably pretty thin.
Could
there.
be 4 cheapies, which isn't ideal.
And that's if you want to pay up for Cleary, Nico Hines, Tom Trebojevic, Reece Walsh, Kalen Pong, whoever it might be, these guys can come out and go 150, 150, 150.
As your captain as well.
Yeah, as your captain. You're not going to captain Jermaine Asako, so that's a good point too. I just don't think, again, could be more egg on the face. Probably will be, but I can't see it happening. Boys, Jeremy Marshall King, a really, really interesting one. 639K. He averaged 63 points per game, which, you sort of look back on it now and feel like it was unders because he had a great season. But he carried injuries throughout a lot of the year. He averaged 74 minutes because of the injuries. It looked like at times that Wayne Bennett's preference was for Marshall King to be an 80-minute hooker, and he absolutely killed it. In 13 games playing 70 minutes plus, he averaged 69.3. So I think that's a lot more accurate. You know, if he does lock down this 80-minute role again, even if he doesn't lock down the 80-minute role, if he locks in, say, a 65, 60-minute role, it's not going to be any less because he's such a focal point of the Dolphins' attack. He probably runs it more and takes it on a little bit more in a 60 to 65-minute role. So I don't think it's completely detrimental. I'm on a little bit of the fence with him, whether I want him or Harry Grant as my premium hooker to start. Spy, Marshall King, I know you're a big fan and someone you're pretty keen on.
Yeah, I don't want him playing 65 minutes. I'll give you the tip. It'll be okay, but I want him playing 73, 4, 5 plus. But I'm finding it hard to not put him in. I just remember how good he was close to the line last year. Try assist, he runs the ball, he still tackles a fair bit with that draw. If, best case scenario, you put him in and you hold him right through to around 19, 20, and then you look at Harry then because he covers all the major buy rounds, good draw, he can make you money. On the flip side, he could come out and if he doesn't set the world on fire, I guess you're stuck with a bloke at, when I say stuck, he's worth 620k, maybe 600 if you lose a bit of cash. And then you got to figure out a way, probably get up to Harry, which is a little bit awkward, not crazy awkward, but I just feel like, based on Melbourne's pack, I want them to prove to me a little bit that they are going to get that go forward back and Harry's going to run a mozza. Like he could, and I hope he does because Harry's a little legend, but I just want to see it first and we'll get him in if needed. I feel like it's a bit of a safe play to go Harry and just go, it's a bit of a boring play. I feel like Marshall King's got excitement written all over it and let's see how he goes.
I don't think it is a boring play though because Harry's at like 25% ownership around about that. So it's like, you know, a quarter of Supercoach's owning.
That's crazy actually. That actually makes me feel better about not owning Harry because when I didn't have him last year, it was like 70 or something crazy.
So I'm sort of sitting there, ads going, it's an extra 110k to go Marshall King to Harry Grant. Marshall King had a lot of attack last year and there's question marks. Can he back it up? What minutes will he play? All these sorts of things. Harry Grant, we know, is the best hooker in Supercoach and probably finishes the number one. Do you just find the extra 120k to do it? How are you sitting at the moment?
I've currently got JMK. I mean, he did win Bulldogs Player of the Year in 2022, so it's not like last year was a flash in the pan. Yeah. Like he's just a quality player.
And that was pretty well, his second year at hooker because he was originally a halfback.
He played a few years, but it was a breakout year for him. But it wasn't a fluke last year is what I'm saying. Like he continued on what he did in 2022. I've currently got him because at the time it was giving me a bit more flexibility. But if I could find a way to get it to Harry Grant, I think I'll go Harry. Even just the round 3 buy, like I would have to look and then I'll have to start the second hooker and that could be someone that I don't want to start. So I'll have to have a look. But Harry's just, I think if we get to the end of the year, we're probably all going to want Harry. Case of how quickly we get there. But you
will have to sell Harry though, come Origin.
Yeah, the buyers
well.
The other thing. So
for the same reason though, you wonder if like you get to round. Obviously, if you want, you can go Marshall King to Harry round 3 or round 5. But let's say they both do start okay or whatever, or Harry's that little bit better, but not worth making the move to, and you get to round 5 or 6, and then you go, all right, I want to make the move to Harry. You then start looking at Origin, and you look at Marshall King's great schedule through there, and you look at Harry Grant and Origin looming up. Probably it's fewer minutes through there. Yeah, all right, well, am I not going to own Harry Grant till round 20?
Yeah, it is a bit awkward. I've got a bit of thinking to do on this one, boys.
We all do.
Boys, Hamiso, Tabuai, Fido, the Hammer. Really interested. And it's a funny one because, you know, more often than not I do, and Supercoaches tend to go with the head. What do the numbers say? And there are a few red flags around Hammer. He's very volatile in his scoring. There's some lower ones in there, whatnot. He's pretty awkwardly priced at 600k. He has that round 3 buy. I'm just seeing one of the best young talents in our game playing fullback in a side that's going to improve with a soft draw. You can pick him at centre, 600k. I'm really keen, Spy.
You know what? You can rarely go too far wrong in sporting life, backing genuine talent, whether it be on the field, in real life, in Supercoach. And Jeremy Marshall fits in that basket a bit as well. They're just genuinely talented and very good players. So
good players.
He's so exciting. He's on like another level. So he could easily go to another level.
We could be sitting here at the end of the year and Hamiso's top 3 to 5 averaging players because he's on such an upward trajectory. You know, it sounds like a big call because he could also come out the first 3 rounds and go 30, 30, 30. Therein lies the risk at 600k. but
It's not that expensive though.
it's not ridiculous. But ads, my gut just says, Hammer, get this bloke in. How do you
Interesting.
feel?
He wasn't in my gut, but that's the beauty of Supercoach. I mean, I'll probably look at it and say, first 2 weeks I won't have him. If he kills it, and then I would need to bring him in, I could bring him in for round 4. I'll have a look at it. But again, those Origin weeks, you're going to have to sell him by then because he'll be playing Origin. So then that's a bad thing. Those 13, 16, 19 for him.
We should note on Origin, it is best 13 players again this year,
Yeah,
so you
that's
don't
true.
have to sell them.
Yeah.
I did say you have to sell Harry. You don't have to.
And also, at least with that, and look, he probably is a sell because he won't play those 3 weeks. But if he's killing it and you want to keep him at centre and everyone wants to own him, he'll play centre in Origin. There's every chance he backs up for the Dolphins, although Wayne does tend to rest a little bit. But at least it's not going to impact him outside of those weeks if you do have your 13. But
Look, I can see why you'd pick him. I mean, the guy was a gun last year. I mean, look at him in Origin. He's clearly class player. If the Dolphins go well, because you're looking at the draw, assuming the Dolphins will be beating those teams.
not
Like
necessarily.
if you look at
points.
bookies where they've got
Scoring
them
points,
ranked, they've got them ranked like they could be losing those games. So
I'm not suggesting to beat them, but they can at least put points on them and at the very least be competitive rather than if it was Penrith, Melbourne, Roosters, whatever, I'd be going,
no,
okay.
fair enough.
Yeah, so look, it couldn't be further from a knockout thing, and there are so many more players in my team, or that will end up in my team or might not, that I'm more confident on than Hammer. Gut says go for
I
it.
should say as well, we're talking about Origin buyers. I'm not getting too caught up in all that. It's just a bonus if they happen to be available and they're still healthy.
Tommy Flegler, 475k. He looks like, I don't want to sound bad here because Tommy Flegler is a terrific footballer and one of the best front rowers in that game. Supercoach-wise, though, I'm not convinced because he averaged 47 points in 44 minutes for the Broncos last season. Is he going to play much more than that 44 minutes this season? I think going to the Dolphins they are stacked for middles. It'll be even better if Cody Nikorima gets the 14 for them. They have a smaller body on the bench. Look, I think he probably goes up to that 50-minute mark. Anything more would be gold. I'm hoping that he can, take the onus of leading this pack around, coming from a side with Pat Carrigan and Payne Haas, and he just ups everything he does. Carrigan Haas, they took freaking a run or two every set. So maybe there's more runs to be had. But looking at the minutes, I don't know if it improves that much on last year. Front row forward, tough position. I don't know if there's a lot better in that spot.
I'm not keen at all, really.
Yeah.
He could come out and do 50 minutes and average 55, in which case he improves by 8 on average. Like that seems like a best case to me. Real NRL will do a hell of a job, but I don't know if I want him. The blokes I want in the front row in Supercoach, whoever I'll end up with, will be whoever I think can improve their average by 10 to 15 and then cash in. And I just don't know if it's him.
And Flegler has a terrific offload, but Wayne Bennett has not historically been a coach that says free the arm. He's a high percentage coach. So I don't know if we can expect that from him, Ads.
I don't know if I'm being influenced by playing draft last year, but in draft last year, it just made me realise how many front rowers score about the same every week that are not even owned by people. Like, we all talk about these same players. Like last year, everyone talked about Christian Welsh at the start of the year, and he didn't prove to be the buy that everyone talked about. And so I reckon you could almost pick any front rower in that range, and a lot of them just come on, do a job, they're consistent. So unless there's one that you can clearly say, change in role.
Is their role going to change?
And there's not much. There's not much as it stands.
Not at the
Their
moment.
minutes,
It's hard to know that with any
hurt?
certainty.
Are they now healthy?
Yeah.
I want a reason
Yeah.
to go, they could really improve here, not just on a gut feel. He might be better at the
I'm
Dolphins.
hoping it's that 5 to 10 minutes extra that he may or may not
Which
get.
could happen, of course.
But it's not going to change you. So you're not going to win the comp because of that. But it might make him a decent purchase.
It's cash though as
Yeah.
well. Like if you can make 150k, that's pretty handy
Yeah.
in the grand scheme.
But I just think there'll be probably a whole bunch of guys that we don't ever even talk about who'd probably do the same. If we went back and looked at last year, I remember looking at thinking, wow, guys that we never even talked about that probably made more cash than a lot of the ones we did talk about. And I reckon a lot of them are at front row. But yeah, I'm not going to overinvest in front row compared to other positions.
And that's the thing. I've been saying it every week, but I'm not keen to pay up at front row for the big boys, Tino, Payne Haas, these blokes that will likely end the season with. Tommy Flegler, at that price, he doesn't necessarily have to make 150k for me. If he can come in and average 45 to 50, plug a hole, allow me to spend up elsewhere, it's not the end of the world.
Yep. Yeah, he's not going to hurt you too bad.
There's a good question on my Dolphins preview on the site, which I've just seen, and it was asking Herbie training inside Asako. So if Herbie, and then he says, does Herbie have sticky fingers? Herbie does have glue hands. Very much so.
Oh, you read my mind, Mr. Whoever wrote that in.
So that is that's one to note for.
About 2 minutes ago, I was about to say that he's going to have to share some points with Herbie in this try scoring department. So yeah, that's another little cross against him.
Spy anyone else at the Finns?
Ooh.
Jack Bostock, 314k.
If he starts, he could be an option.
He could be an option. He'll be on that left wing, I'd imagine. Lock goes to Asako on the right. His numbers from last year were not good. He averaged 39 points in 4 games. He had 3 scores of 21, 29, and 17. It'd have to be a real lack of cheapies for me to consider him, even if he starts.
Yeah, the only 2 I had on my watch list were Herbie. Yeah, I'm not going to start with him, but to see how he goes. And Valence Tafade, if he's stripped 12 kilos. He actually went all right last year when he played his big game, so keep an eye on him. I've also figured out where the saying, more than one way to skin a cat comes from. So if I want to drop a bit of knowledge this week, it's from an 1840 book about accountancy called The Money Diggers. And they have dropped that in there, and it's, where are we? Nearly 200 years later and still rolling. So fair play to American humorist Seba Smith.
Sounds like a riveting read. And I'm an actuary, so I just bagged accountants, but yeah, an 1800s book about accounting.
Thanks to our Inspector Clouseau for getting on the job there, boys. Before we get to the Penrith Panthers, Matty, Dolphins. Thoughts, comments, concerns, interests?
Pretty quick one. I'm pretty locked into Marshall King, to be honest. I think I'll definitely go with him. And that's probably about it. That's who no one else. I probably won't go Hamiso. I've got another centre in mind that I'm going to splash some cash on.
Taught me out of hammer time.
No. It's in one of the next 2 teams, so I'll bring it up then.
Right. Yeah. Guys, Paddy and George from Mortgage Choice SCW, long-time supporters of SC Playbook. They're on deck for the 2024 NRL season. They can do everything from getting the best rate on your home loan if you're looking to get into the market in the future, to a car loan, personal loan, whatever it might be. They do debt consolidation, another key offering if you're struggling to stay on top of your bills. Best of all, guys, if you want to reach out to them, you listen to the SC Playbook podcast. So if you mention that, you'll save $129 on a free consult. It doesn't matter where you're based in Australia. You can give them a buzz, have a chat to them. To get in contact, message them on Instagram, probably the easiest way. Direct message, Pat and George _SCW. You can also call them, if you're a bit old-fashioned, 02 9521 1611. The emails are also in our predicted teams article at the top of the SC Playbook website. Paddy will also absolutely dribble your ear off on why Luke Brooks is going to be the best signing in Manly history, so you can chat to him about that if you do make the call. Guys, the Penrith Panthers start the season with a pretty tough draw. The Melbourne Storm away, Eels at home, Broncos at home, Roosters away, Seagulls away into a bye. That's a very difficult draw, especially if Manly hit the ground running and Parramatta, who, let's face it, Para outside of finals always get up against the Penrith Panthers. So it is a concerning draw. Will there be any premiership hangover? Time will tell. Let's start with the big dog himself, Nathan Cleary. $912,000, 42% ownership overall, which initially I was going to say surprising was so low, but it's a lot of money, especially when people pay out for Nico Hines as well. So, as we hadn't sort of spoken about teams or makeups of teams prior to this podcast, and you were pretty adamant you wanted Cleary and Hines, I'm the same. We had a bit of a chat about him earlier, but talk to us on why, Nath Cleary locked in.
Yeah, I think if you're in doubt, just go watch the second half of the grand final. Yeah. Like, the guy's superstar. I think he's a proven super coach weapon every year, and I don't want to be running without him. I just think it'd be I just think he's going to be a captaincy choice every week. Now, probably not in those first 5 weeks.
Pretty tough, yeah.
But man, he's just so super coach bomb-proof again that I can't leave him out.
So, starting the season, I did some digging. The first 5 games, his Supercoach averaged the last 3 years. How did he come back off these premierships? 2023, his first 3-round average, he averaged 56.6. He then went bang, bang to finish with a 5-round average of 90.4, so about on par with his average last year. Pardon me. 2022, he missed the first 3 rounds of the season. He then opened up his first 2 games with scores of 34 and 57. He then, after the following 3 rounds, had a 5-round average of 97.6. He went bonkers again. In 2021, straight up, first 5-round average, 99 points. Basically, if you're expecting him or wanting him to have a slow start, maybe the first couple of rounds, going off the last 3 years or last 2 years, first 5 rounds, he's averaged what he's averaged for the season. So, Spy, unless you're really keen on Mitch Moses or Sammy Walker or whoever it might be, I struggle to find anyone else.
No, I think he'll average over 100 this year in Supercoach. I think his role's going to evolve. I think he might play out the back a little bit more at second receiver, maybe on the right and left edge this year. That may not unfold, but that's his base is 90-odd. So if he then adds that in, I think the off-season will do him wonders. Just some extended rest. He can average over 100 and he's in. The draw doesn't worry me too much. Like, sure, you'd love a super easy draw, but you know what? Gets the harder draw here to start. Penrith, and then once the slightly lesser teams are starting to get more injury ravaged come middle of the season and later in the season, you can tear them to shreds as well. So
I mean, he could be
straight in.
He could be a long way off his peak. I know it sounds ridiculous because he's the top half in the comp.
I agree.
But if you look at halves in the comp, most of the good halves are over 30. Some of them well over 30. He's not there yet, so he's still getting better, as we saw in the grand final.
Unquestionably better.
Yeah, so who knows what he could be this year.
Ditto Nico Hines, who's 2 years into his move to halfback at a new club. So that's the thing with, like, particularly look at Kalen, Nico and Cleary. You say, all right, they're probably priced pretty close to their peak, but maybe not. Like, they could come out and explode and all of a sudden they're over $1 million and people are battling to get them in. So, I'm not necessarily convinced they are priced where they should be. Brian Toto, $720K, a really interesting one because I started with him last year. I think I owned him just about all last year, and he was great, aside from resting against some real ordinary teams at times, which was very tough to stomach around Origin. Probably the most consistent centre wing option in Supercoach. 71 last season, never really goes big. And I think the reasoning for that is just there's so much balanced attack across the board at Penrith that they can score anywhere. Whereas, we look at Greg Marju at the Knights last year where he went nuts and had his big scores.
Peachy steals to Oz tries.
Yeah. Well, the Knights go to the left, they go to the left, they go to the left. It's Ponga's stronger side with the entire team's stronger side, so he gets a lot of balls, similar to the Dolphins with Asako. Last season, he had 4 tons to his name, but the top score was 112. In 2022, similar story. 3 tons, top score of 116. He had 35 in base last year, awesome, but there's nothing saying that he can't pump out bigger scores, but historically in recent years, Spy, we just haven't seen it. So with that tough draw, I'm happy to try and get maybe Bizzer in later in the season.
Yeah. To'o and Tungo, they're 2 blokes that are classic on my watch list. Let's see how they're looking early and see if we are going to need to target them within those first, 4 to 8 weeks. But yeah, I just think he probably lacks that, as I said, super upside at the price. And I'd rather, again, Kiraz, for example, 120K cheaper. I might do something similar. It's a lot of money saved to start the year.
And if Nathan Cleary does, as we sort of as we saw at the back end of last season, he brought that sweeping on the left side of the field into his game, that's not going to help Toto either. So, no Stephen Crichton either. He played both sides. Tunga, swap. Anyway, not that keen on him. Taylor May adds back from an ACL injury, $458K, a significant discount on his 2022 average of 64 points per game. Expected to make the move to centre this season. Back in 2022 in his proper debut season, 29 in base. He busted 87 tackles in 20 games. Spy and I have spoken about him. We're both very keen on him. Are you keen on him and the shift to centre? How do you see that impacting things?
Yeah, I've got him in my side, so that's not because we've been talking. So I do have him there at the moment. Look, I think he's a really interesting player in general to know what he's going to do this year because he had that great 2022, obviously missed 2023. Who knows what his potential is? On one hand, he's coming off an ACL. On the other hand, he's kind of growing into his body and he's and I hear plenty of good things about him, about how strong he is and all that sort of stuff. So I just think in that Penrith side, you probably can't go wrong. I mean, they're going to be premiership favourites and up there all year. You probably can't go wrong bringing him in, can you? And
Work rate.
If they pick him in round one, I'm willing to say they're not risking him with a ACL issue.
Yeah.
So
Tap twice if all the May brothers have signed for the Dogs for 25.
no, there's no tapping there, man.
Anyone else there, Spy? There's actually not that
really
much going on.
It's because
at
they're
Penrith.
they're Penrith, they're at their peak.
They've won 3 comps in a
We'll look at
row.
them
They're all
later.
priced accordingly.
Just don't get bloody Sonny Luke. Haunted.
Did you have him all last year?
The whole season.
I sold him, I reckon.
couldn't get rid of him.
I reckon I sold him about round 18 or 19. It might have been earlier than that, but I was one of the lucky ones.
Yeah, I didn't have him, so it was just a joy to watch.
I'll never start with a cheap centre again, hooker again, because you can't do anything with him if they suck. And not that he sucks, he just no minutes.
Yeah.
He did play like 8 minutes for me in like around 26 when I was a bit short of the hooker. Had a try assist and got 34 or something. I was like, come on.
It's like Franklin Pele on the bench. You just stuck and you just watch his goal all year, regretting it.
If Sammy Hughes is a Franklin Pele 2.0, you'll be dead to me, mate.
Yeah, sorry, man.
Matty, Panthers, anyone that stands out there, mate, is Cleary a lock and load for you?
Cleary lock. Probably put in May as well. He's a freak. But that's, probably nothing more to add.
Yeah, weirdly not that exciting to start the year. Of course, they'll become relevant at some point. Boys, the final team to touch on, the North Queensland Cowboys, a team, a lot of promise for them this year. Their team is stacked. Their depth is terrific. And we'll start at the top, Spy, and we'll go with you, Scotty Drinkwater, one of your many, many boys. He was superb last season, averaged, in excess of 80 points to the year. In that, he also had a game of about a 2-point score early on due to a send-off, and it just didn't go right for him. 851 to start the year, 83-point average for the season. Sorry, I didn't touch on it. Their draw to start the year is also quite good. Dolphins away, Knights at home, Dragons away, Broncos away, Titans at home. It's a good draw. You know, he's the one, probably because of the price, that we haven't, and a lot, I think, podcasters, content creators out there all across social, haven't seen a lot about him because we're all talking about all these other fullbacks. What about yourself?
Well, sadly, very sadly, I don't. You know what? I've got 4 categories for all these teams. I've got in, maybe, avoid, and watch list, and he's basically hopping between have and avoid. But I actually put him in avoid today, and my logic behind
You're a
that
drinky.
is
You're drinky's number one.
Pappenhausen and Drinky. Tough.
Gee whiz.
But so the reason
Breaking
being,
news.
I'll hopefully own him midway through the season, but sides come out strong, you know, round 1 to 6, whatever it may be. There's minimal injuries. They're fired up. I don't know if that suits Drinky. So you've got you guys like Tommy Latrell and all that do a reasonable amount of work. They can offload and do all this. Drinky's a try
Kick
assister.
goals.
Yep. He's a try assister and he scores some tries. He ravages anyone that's not on their game. He'll just destroy them. He's not a work rate kind of guy, although he has improved it.
You're right, like back end of the season when he did so much damage and went bonkers. Teams that have their niggles, blokes are playing injured, they're tired, the fatigue setting in. Early in the season,
If he spots a weakness, he'll exploit it, no doubt about it. How many weaknesses are there early in the season? I'm just not so sure. Like he's good enough to come out and still score well. Even round 3, look at that draw. They've got St George, right? I'm very wary of the Flanagan effect over at St George, especially early in the year. I just think he's going to have them G'd up to defend their asses off. And Saints might not win a game for 5 weeks, but I bet they're not getting 40
They
put
could
on them.
lose 6-4.
Yeah, it could be like some 12-10 grinds. I could be wrong, but I'm a little bit wary of that with Saints this year. So, isn't a void, Scotty. I'll see you in round 9, brother.
Adds any temptation there?
I've never been a drinky guy. Not that's in just I've never had him in my side.
I was
really.
about to say, get out.
Yeah, no,
Carry
but
on.
I can. But to be honest, and I've seen you pick him, and he's done great things. So I've missed out there. I'm like I said before, I'm in on turbo, but with that draw, I respect what you say. Could well be true, but
But you're still happy to
I just
play
think it's
Saints.
personal opinion, right? I just think you come down. If you're a drinky fan, you think that's a great pod, go for it. Like I'll be going turbo. Some people will be going Latrell. Some people will be going Kalen.
I agree.
Perhaps, like,
Fullbacks are so hard.
they're all guns, and
They could all do it.
they'll all probably go well at some point of the year. And so there's a bit of a Just who's your favourite?
My worry's
And
purely
Drinky
that-
hasn't been my favourite historically.
Yeah, my pure worry on Drinky is that he could score an 18 when one of these other guys, their lowest might be a 60 or a 50.
I think that's where it's
Early in the year only.
Yeah.
It goes out the window.
That's why I look at
once.
Turbo. Like,
Yeah.
unless Turbo breaks in a game, which is very possible,
he'll have tries and
it
assists.
just
and
even
all
when he
that.
has a bad game, he
Yeah.
gets 70. You're like,
Yeah.
this guy just.
Ditto Ponga, like
he's-
a little bit different, but you just don't feel like Ponga, barring injury, is going to have anything lower than 40 or 50. But again, like Drinky last year, there weren't many of them.
Didn't do it much.
No.
He was good.
How was their draw last year? Yeah.
Valentine Holmes, boys, a 72-point average last season. He based 31 per game. Terrific for a centre. Starts at 736K. Spy, with the soft draw, goal kicking, I'm not paying up for him because I like a bit of value elsewhere. But if they start the season on fire, there's no reason why not.
Early watch list, Val. You could start with him, sure, but I think just let's see how him and the boys are looking and make a move for him early enough if you like what you see.
I think he's more reliable than Asako at the price. Like, he's just a proven.
Yep.
Feel like you know what you're going to get with value. You're going to get a 700K centre.
You
He
don't
might have
necessarily need
swings, but
tries.
yeah, like I don't think he's going to be $1 million player that you regret not getting. But equally, he's probably going to solidly put out those scores. Whereas Asako, you don't really know.
Bit of
But I'm not going him just because I don't want to spend that much on a centre. But he's got a soft draw.
Spy.
Hang on, I'll jump in early for me. This is the one I'm going to go. Val, I really like Val. Like, he's one of my favourite players. I think the Cowboys are going to be the biggest improvers of any team this year. I reckon they're a good chance of making the top 4. And I think Val's the best centre in the comp. So, yeah, he's in my team.
Love it.
Gun goal kicker.
Yeah. He's
Love it.
Yeah. I haven't put it all together, but I'll be really, really trying.
I don't mind it at all. I really don't. Fair play.
Matty makes a fair point. Where do we think the Cowboys are going to finish?
I'm with Matty.
Yeah.
On the up.
Somewhere in the 7-hour podcast, we did chat about the Cowboys the other day, and
look for it.
I had them as one of the big improvers. I think I had them 5th or 6th or something. I think they've got a great
hope so.
The
squad.
side's stacked. Like,
Yeah.
their second row is insane.
Yeah, awesome team. Great draw early on. Boys, front row. 2 that I'm looking at. Ruben Cotter, who I started with last season, and he actually went all right. He had injuries early on that came about round 3 or something from memory. Dual front row, second row. I wouldn't pick either of these guys in the second row, but front row forward position we're battling with. Cotter, just been handed the captaincy at the Cowboys, 542K. Jason Taumalolo, the gut feel straight up says, oh, no, I'm not keen on him, getting a bit older. He's only about 30 years old. He played injured seemingly all last year and the year before. I don't know how fit and firing he is this year, but if he looks good in trials and there's no niggles, dual second row forward, front row forward this season, he's 439K. If he gets back to fitness, even if his minutes aren't, much more than 50-odd, which is obviously a preference of Todd Payton, when he's fit and killing it, he's busting tackles, he's offloading, he might jag a bit more of an attacking stat. Spy, probably won't say Cotter a huge preseason watch because we know what we'll get. Probably more round 1 bench watch at how many minutes we expect him to get. Taumalolo's a huge watch in the trials.
Yeah, Cotter, I'm just a little bit worried about how much he improves. I think he will improve. I'm just wondering whether it's going to be 4 or 5 points a game or that 10, 15. That'd be nice. But I think he can do a job. I'm just a touch wary on him. Jason Taumalolo, he is 30. Had a look today, so he's not old by any stretch.
30.
Again, that long off season's just good for all those blokes. He only has to get back to his average of the 2 years previous, not his elite years of 70, of mid-50s. Suddenly he's making you 130K and doing a job. He's in my side at the moment.
Remember when he was not very long ago, he was one of your first pick players for the season.
Yeah.
What do you reckon, Ads?
I get where you come from. I've currently got Cotter and not Taumalolo, but to be honest, Cotter's in there as a bit of a placeholder of saying a front row of that sort of value, which gives me an opportunity to bring in a cheaper guy. But look, obviously Taumalolo is of interest because you want him to do what he did a few years ago. But I don't know. I just see that he seems to be getting less and less time in that Cowboys side, and I don't know. Look, he's got a number of years left in his deal. He's the sort of player that if he changed clubs, then he'd be awesome Supercoach. You could go, you get him priced, he's now got a bigger role. Like just make it up, but say he came to the Bulldogs, you go, imagine what his role will be versus last year.
Yeah.
But I don't see his role in that Cowboys side getting bigger because there's guys that they've got to give more minutes to. Like you've got, I don't know how to say his last name, Finna Fawaki or...
Yeah,
you don't even have him in your 17.
Yeah.
Guy's a weapon.
It's
he
crazy.
He needs minutes in that side.
Does he play
can't
Fini
believe
Fuaki?
he-
Does he play edge or middle?
Edge.
He's edge. That's the only thing. So, look, with Tamalolo, though, I only want him back at 2022 Tamalolo, not the elite years. I just
Doesn't
want
need to do
Just
much.
54 or 5, and I'm cheering.
He's very tempting. He's very tempting.
He's just priced so low. It's incredible.
Yeah.
If he was based on a 55 average, I would not even look at him. Put it like that.
He's based on a
He might have
43
convinced me.
a 43-point average on 49 minutes.
So what's his price? Is he 370k? Is that right, or is that the end of last
430
year?
odd K, so it's basically what? 10, yeah.
He's at 439k.
The 2 years previous, 58 and 55. That's all I need from him. So
Yeah, look, I mean, if
you're
you're
gonna do
trying to get a guy on your side, that sort of price, which we probably will want to do, he
Could
could
be
go
him.
up. Yeah, like you're almost talking me into it. as we
Fitness
sit here.
is everything. How does he look in the preseason? If he's, we're not going to know his minutes in the preseason, but if he's busting tackles,
I just want to say 2
know
runs
he's-
from him and
he's
go,
good.
how are you looking, mate? Yeah.
yeah. Boys, just to wrap up the Cowboys, Helam Lukey's a bloke that, again, in that mid-range 2RF position, that so much upside. I probably won't start with him just because they've got... I think Lukey and Nanai will be the edge-back rowers. I think Luciano Leilua probably plays more of a middle role. But then you look at Fini Fuiaki. If he comes off the bench, there's another edge there. I just want to see it. If Lukey is getting 60 to 65 early, could easily be in my team by, say, round 3. Spy, anyone else you wanted to touch on there?
Just on Luke, he goes at a point a minute.
He's so
a minute.
good.
If he gets big minutes, but I just like you, I want to see how the back row rotation plays out. They got a lot to fit in there.
To this point in his career, granted a lot of injuries. He's never been an 80-minute back rower. You'd think he's got it in him, but he's had a lot of injuries, and it hasn't happened yet.
Jeremiah Nanai is a little sneaky, smoky shouty. We know he could do anything. It's a risky one, but if you wanted to sort of have a look at a pod, he could potentially be an option. But again, that back row, I think I'm just going to see how that back row plays out before making any decisions around the Cowboys.
Boys, a few questions before...
Zach Labert.
Spy, Zach Labert.
Already spoke about him a few
Well,
weeks
we have
ago,
spoken
but
about him, but...
just wanted to mention him. Couldn't go without. We'll see how he's looking. He's only 22 or 22. So again, he's upward trajectory. I like him. Whether I'd be bold enough to start with him or have a look, I'm not sure. We'll see.
They did. I saw a story today. Viliami Vailea having some visa troubles, I think it might have been. So hasn't made it over and trained with them yet. So someone threw it out there on Twitter or X, whatever you want to call it these days, and said that Vailea was the front runner originally, but because hasn't been over there, that Laybutt would be. I thought they'd give Laybutt a crack. He was so good last year in a few games.
I'd much rather Valea be here and him beat him for the spot. So there's a
so
few little
that's a
flags.
concern.
That flags for me a little bit.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Few questions. Boys, the first one from our good friend, the NRL Supercoach Sponge. Can the SC Spy ask Matty Ryan if having both Lane and Hopgood is too many eels, 2RF to start with? I need the advice of the man who constantly beats Spy every year. Spy.
Every year's a stretch. Righto.
2 in a row, is it? Or one?
Well, I've known him 2 years. He's dusted me twice. So it's been a dark 18 months. We've been on that. I was going to sledge him. I felt bad.
Yeah, you got nothing to sledge about, mate. He's got you covered.
Well,
Yeah.
I was thinking more real sport.
I know
but
you're
that's a bit
thinking, you
rough.
sicko. You're sick, mate.
That was actually
very rough.
That
Shout out to Matty, who unfortunately the Socceroos went down, heartbreaking circumstances. 97th minute penalty, I think it was, to square it up then in injury time. Bowed out early for the Asian Cup. Matty was immense in it though.
Oh man, he barely let in the goal. He's class act, that boy.
He conceded one in the group stage and then
True
Could
heartbreak
have
of
been
that
anything in
one.
that game if it wasn't for him.
Yeah.
Absolute
Very
true
disappointing.
heartbreak of that game. So in answer to Spongey's question, he will tell you to have both. He loves the Eels. Just go with Lane, I think, to start. Hopgood later.
Question from Marcus El Lobo. Running one of the Lukes in starting 5'8 spot, Metcalf, Cleary or Brooks. If you had to go one of those ads, it's an interesting position, 5'8", and we'll touch on it more down the track, but because people are going heavy in fullback and halfback, if you're not paying up for, say, Dylan Brown, Munster, Cody Walker, which a lot of people aren't, they're looking cheaper. There's a lot of options around 4, 5, maybe early 600K. Which of the Lukes, which of those three would you be going? It's not a hot field.
None of the above. No, none of those guys excite me. I had Cleary last year in a draft. Actually, he was pretty good in draft. Actually, so Cleary went better than I thought. But to be honest, I haven't looked at any of those 3 Lukes, but I don't feel good about the 5/8 that I do have in my current side either. I feel a bit dirty looking at that. So I think 5/8's going to be a really difficult position to get right.
Yeah.
Do you really want to pay big dollars for Dylan Brown as an example? But
It's so awkward, 5/8.
yeah, it's just awkward. We haven't talked a lot about 5/8 tonight, but because of the teams. But I don't think I'm going to get that desperate that I'm looking at those 3 blokes. At a pinch, go with Cleary.
We do. You touched on NRL Supercoach draft there. The first of our draft content we'll be doing a fair bit throughout the pre-season. Maxi Bryden, Stevie Heavener, who's done heaps in the past. The first one, Maxi's done up a ripping yarn around basically how to play. Beginners, how do you start, how do you pick your team, what are things you need to know, ripping yarn. So Supercoach draft for beginners at scplaybook.com.au, rankings and all sorts of good things coming up a little bit later on in the pre-season.
Can I say something on draft?
You can do that, mate.
If you haven't played draft, I reckon it is really worth playing. We talked about this last year. Like, I loved it as an addition to playing Classic, and I reckon it helps your Classic game playing draft because it does make you think about some positions and
Open
players
your
that
eyes
you
a bit
wouldn't.
elsewhere, yeah.
Well, suddenly you're looking at the whole comp.
Yep.
And like I said before, front row, you're starting to realise that, hold on, there's plenty of front rowers and they're all kind of scoring the same here. So I think it does make you think a bit differently, and it's actually really good fun as well. So I'd highly recommend
So
playing.
for those that don't know, in draft you select one player per selection, and so for example, if you really want Scotty Drinkwater, you can lock him in and you own him for the year, and then you can trade if you want to. But it's super cool to know that you're the only person who owns
Owning
that
one player.
Yeah.
And it's closer to real life, I can say, having been involved at the Dogs, because when you get an injury, it sucks.
You can't just go, hey, no, thank you, come over for a couple of weeks at Borrow.
But yeah, it was really good fun.
Yeah, great concepts. Have a crack at that one. Boys, next question is, Ads, this one's for you because we've spoken about it a lot and I'm really keen to get your thoughts. And I'm putting you on the spot here a little bit, but question from the Batman. With the Vegas field width being almost identical to UK fields like Old Trafford, where the likes of DC and Jake have played, are people overreacting to the possible effect it will have? Super League still sees plenty of backline sweeping plays, ... turbo, double, inbound. So the question that I'm going to elaborate on from the Batman, what sort of impact do you see the Vegas trip having on the clubs that go over? Firstly, from the thinner field that they're playing on, do you see less points? The surface, the trip over to Vegas, any major impact, or do you think people are overthinking it from a Supercoach perspective?
I think from a Supercoach perspective, overthinking it. I'm not even going to think about any of that stuff. We're playing a full season here. It's not going to... Because then we can start saying, do we want to put on a spectacle, or the ref's going to let the game run? I mean, who knows, right? It's round one. There's so many questions. I'm just going to pick it like it's normal.
Yep.
I think the bigger challenge for me is thinking there's 4 sides here where we have to make our decisions a week earlier without knowing the rest of the sides and the cheapies. That's the bit that
It's a big down.
I'm looking at going, geez, normally you want to know how many cheapies you can lock in and you're kind of guessing. So buying mid-range players in those teams might be tricky. So that's the bigger thing for me. I actually think from a real NRL perspective, I'm pretty happy the Bulldogs aren't one of them this year. I just think there's a lot of uncertainties, and to be honest, it just feels really disruptive.
I agree.
All the things they need to do, and with where we're coming from, it's not the year to be going to Vegas, but looking forward to seeing the other 4 teams play.
Bloody oath. Boys, we will wrap that up for this week's podcast. Spy, thank you, mate.
Cheers, fellas.
Adds strong first up for the season.
Thank you, mate. Thank you.
Guys,
You're freshened up actually after a long off season as well, I think. Big
Looking
year
good.
ahead.
Oh, yeah.
I
I need to. I've been given the word by the coach, like, need a lift. So, I'm like Jason Taumalolo. I'm running on old
Bounce
numbers.
back here.
Yeah,
I hope that Jason Taulo performs as well as you in round one as you did on your first part of the season, mate. Guys, the latest episode of the Cricketers Playbook podcast available through the SC Playbook channels. Myself, Maxi Bryden, Hammy Goodman. I get that wrong every time. Sorry, Hammy. From the Bloke in a Bar potty. Very, very funny man. And some great cricketing minds. Expanding out to general cricket podcasting and content. Go and check that one out. Tis a good listen, the latest episode. And also, if you want to follow us on our socials, Twitter, TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, all over the shop, SC Playbook 1 or just SC Playbook. Changes from where to go. Thanks for tuning in.